Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Can we just acknowledge something right from the beginning? I don't know where you're from, but I'm on the west coast of Canada. This started at 7 a.m. in the morning, and it's Saturday, and we're here. I think that's just kudos to everyone. So, thank you for being here. I also want you to give yourself credit because a lot of us are doing something a whole lot bigger than just getting out of bed on a Saturday morning. We have made a decision that most people never make. We decided to become entrepreneurs. Nobody gave us a business. No one promoted us into entrepreneurship. We made a decision. We decided to take an idea, a skill, a passion, a dream, and build something from it. We decided we wanted the freedom to choose what we do with our days instead of having someone else decide for us. Now, I'm not saying entrepreneurship is better than having a job. It's not, it's just different. Most people are perfectly happy building someone else's dream. I remember once going for an interview. My business wasn't doing well, and I did this interview, and the man looked at me and said, Jan, you are so unemployable. Go home and make your business work. And it was some of the best advice I ever had. Entrepreneurs, you see things differently than other people see them. We have an idea, and somewhere in the back of our head, we think, I could build a business out of this. And then we do, or at least we try. Here's the interesting part. The freedom we wanted came with a price. We became the person responsible for all of our decisions every single day. The big decisions, the little decisions. Now, some we make in minutes, and many we avoid for months, which brings me to the title of this talk. which brings me to the, sorry, which brings me to the title of this talk. You don't have a business problem, you have a decision problem. Now, some of you may be thinking, no, Jan, you don't get it. I have a marketing problem, or I have a sales problem, or I have a cash flow problem. Maybe. Over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to challenge that idea because underneath almost every business problem is a decision you've been postponing. Most people think they have a business problem. I need more clients. I need more time. I need more money. My marketing isn't working. Now, those all sound like business problems. And I'll admit, sometimes they are. However, over the years, I've discovered that many of them have something else underneath them that's missing, a decision. So what I want you to do right now is think about a challenge that you're facing, the one that's been hanging around, the one that you think about more often than you probably would like to admit. And then ask yourself, not how do I fix it, not who can help me, not what's the next strategy. Instead, I want you to ask yourself the question, what's the decision I've been avoiding? Because decisions create direction. And without direction, even the best strategy isn't going to help you. You can work harder, you can read more books, you can hire a coach, you can take another course, you can download another AI tool, become more efficient. Yet if you haven't made the decision that needs to be made, you're simply becoming more efficient at going around in circles. That's why I don't believe people have a business problem. I honestly believe they have a decision problem. Now, that could be raising your prices, it could be letting go of a client, hiring a person that you've needed for months and have put off, letting go of something that no longer serves you in your business, or admitting you've been trying to make something work that you should have walked away from months ago, maybe even years ago. The business problem is usually the symptom. The decision is the cause. Once you make the decision, the problem often begins to solve itself. Not because business suddenly becomes easy, because you're finally moving in the right direction. So every business problem has a decision underneath it. And I want to prove this to you today. Think about now this biggest frustration in your business right now. Don't put it in the chat, just think about it. And then ask yourself, what decision is underneath that problem? Whether it's a marketing problem, what decision haven't you made? If it's a sales problem, what decision are you avoiding? Cash flow problem, what decision are you neglecting? You see, businesses don't make decisions. People do. And businesses don't procrastinate. People do. Businesses don't avoid difficult conversations. People do. Sometimes one decision changes everything. So let me give you an example. When I was 19, my parents and I bought one of the first Molly Maid cleaning franchises on the west coast of Canada. And at the time, it sounded like a fabulous opportunity. More women were entering the workforce, professional house cleaning was taking off, and I thought we had got in at exactly the right time. I invested my inheritance from my grandmother as my 50% share, and we launched the business. Thought it was a great decision. However, it didn't take me long to discover something important. The problem wasn't the business. The problem was that I hated managing employees. Every week, it was like someone had a reason they couldn't come to work. A sick child, a family emergency, life happened. And every time someone didn't show up, either my mother or I had to step in to do the work. So the plans for the day went out the window and everything changed. And there was nothing we could do about it except show up and go clean the house. Now, ironically, I don't mind cleaning houses. At some point in time, I had a really successful house cleaning business. But at one point, I said to my parents, I want out. I didn't like it. Their response, we're not buying you out, Jan. I'd made the commitment. If I wanted to leave, I had to walk away. And I did. I walked away from the investment. I was 20 years old. And looking back, I have to say it was one of the best business decisions I've ever made. Not because I left Molly Maid, because I learned something that has guided my business and every business decision ever since. I have never had employees, ever. That one decision gave me incredible clarity. I've always hired people who were entrepreneurs. I've hired subcontractors, and it has worked out brilliantly. So sometimes the most valuable business decision isn't discovering what you want. It's discovering what you don't want. Because every decision teaches you something. The question isn't whether it worked out exactly as you hoped. The question is, what did it teach you that will help you make the next decision? Because once you know that, you stop building someone else's version of success and start building your own. One of the biggest myths, I think, in entrepreneurship is that successful entrepreneurs have everything figured out before they begin. Let me tell you, they don't. Most of us start long before we feel ready. We make a decision and then we learn. When I was fresh out of high school, I worked as a temporary, the Kelly girl in office overload. Well, I was one of them. That meant walking into offices where I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the people. I didn't know the business. I didn't know their system. And within minutes, I was answering their phones, greeting clients, typing letters, and doing whatever needed to be done. That's a tough training ground, let me tell you. But I learned to adapt. And the more you learn to adapt, the more confident you become. Because every challenge that you overcome becomes evidence that you can handle the next one. Every challenge you overcome becomes evidence that you can handle the next one. That's how confidence is built. Not by waiting or watching everyone else, by doing. And when you trust yourself, making decisions becomes a whole lot easier. At 17, I moved myself to Montreal on a bus, and I worked in bilingual offices speaking French fluently. I rented this really awful little suite in a house with crooked floors and an old bed, and I made friends, found work, and supported myself with no help from my parents. Later, I also learned Spanish, and I lived and traveled through Central America. I lived in 5 cities in Mexico. Why am I telling you this? Because decisions stretch you. They force you to become more resourceful, more adaptable, and more confident than you ever thought possible. That's what decisions do. They don't just change your circumstances, they change you. They change how you handle life. And that's really exactly what entrepreneurs need to do every single day. When I entered the automotive industry, I knew almost nothing about it. I knew how to drive a car. That's the closest thing I knew to the automotive industry. That was the extent of my experience. I had to make a decision. Was I willing to become a beginner again? I decided I was willing to learn. And eventually, I built 3 successful businesses in that industry. Recently, I renovated my house after moving to Vancouver Island. Again, I made a decision. I learned. I didn't know how to renovate a house. I didn't know what I was doing, but I asked questions, made decisions, and got it done in 6 weeks. These were renovations that most people would have taken 6 months to do. Do you see the pattern? Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because confidence isn't what comes first. The decision comes first. And then you learn, and then you solve problems, and then you adapt, and then you make mistakes and discover that you survive them. And that's an important thing. Mistakes don't kill you. That's how confidence is built, not by waiting, by doing. So, confidence doesn't mean doing everything yourself. It means trusting yourself to figure out the next step. Sometimes you learn it, sometimes you hire it, sometimes you just ask for help. What matters is that you keep moving. Every challenge you overcome becomes evidence that you can handle the next one. And that's why every decision becomes a little easier than the last. The biggest decisions don't just change your circumstances, they shape who you become. It took me almost 65 years to realize something about decision making. I thought everyone made decisions the way I did. I make decisions super fast. I don't hesitate. I make big decisions fast. So I thought that was normal. So this year I'm working with my coach, and some of you will know her, Forbes Riley. And during one of our interviews, she looked at me and she said, "You're really good at making decisions." And without thinking or blinking an eye, I said, "No, I'm brilliant at making decisions." She heard it at the same time I did. It just came flying out of my mouth. She looked at me and she said, "I suck at making decisions." Now we're on camera. This is on her YouTube channel. So I'm not telling stories out of school. And I looked at her and I thought, this is a woman who has sold over $1 billion worth of products. She's built an extraordinary career, incredible success. And here she is openly admitting that making decisions is something she struggles with. And I have to say, that conversation changed my life. Not because Forbes taught me how to make decisions. That's not what happened. What helped me realize is that something that I didn't know before. I had never thought of decision making as a skill. I just simply thought it was how everyone operated. So I started looking back over my life, not as a collection of stories, but as a collection of decisions. Because now I really got from that conversation how important decisions are, and that not everybody is good at them, and yet we make them all the time. And what I realized is that every important decision gave me exactly what I needed for the next one. So, for example, at 6 years old, I learned courage. I was the only kid sitting in the auditorium while everyone else was standing to sing the national anthem. Because of the religion I was raised in, I was not allowed to stand for the national anthem. I can still see myself, that little girl, terrified, my heart pounding, my sweat palms sweaty, terrified, and yet doing it because I had been taught that was what I was to do. And I made the decision at that young age that I would follow what I had been taught. At 14, I decided to become a vegetarian. Now, that was not cool 50 years ago. Let me tell you, my parents were horrified. They said, "That's fine. Mom's not cooking for you." I was the only kid left at home. "And you will be in the kitchen every day and you will make your own dinner. And mom is not helping you. And you have 30 days." That was 50 years ago. I'm still a vegetarian. That taught me tenacity. At 17, I got on that bus and I moved myself to Montreal. That taught me independence. Years later, my first husband and I, we sold everything, left good careers, and moved to Ecuador, where we were missionaries for 4 years. Now, learning Spanish as an adult has to be one of the most humbling experiences of my life. And for the first time, I couldn't express myself the way I wanted to. Mistakes were made, sometimes embarrassing. I won't even tell you about the one about my husband asking for chicken breasts. He didn't use the right term for breasts. That's all I'll say. And we still laughed about that one for a long time. I had to ask for help, and you kept going. That decision taught me something I still use today. Not knowing isn't the problem. Being unwilling to learn is. Because every few years, there's something new to learn. Have you noticed? Today it's AI. Tomorrow, who knows what it'll be. The entrepreneurs who keep growing aren't the ones who pretend they already know everything. They're the ones who are willing to become beginners again. That decision didn't just teach me Spanish, it taught me humility and being comfortable saying, "I don't know. Teach me." And that was one line that I have to say, a lot of people were surprised over the years. I would just say, "I don't know that." They would look at me like, "But you're supposed to know everything." Or, "You're the leader and you're saying you don't know." And yet I have found that that word, "I don't know," has been made me a better entrepreneur. Every new opportunity begins with the decision to learn something you don't know today. Then in my early 40s, I walked away from a very successful networking organization I had founded called Women Empowering Women. And I spent 3 months volunteering in a small village in South Africa. It was an incredible experience. Just a moment, please. I can still see the little girls and little boys, just adorable. Their faces painted and their decoration and how vibrant they were and how much they wanted to be loved. I have pictures of the children gathered around me, just wanting to be hugged and touched and paid attention to because mom was busy. She maybe had 6, 7 kids. She was running a household. She had pigs, she had chickens, she had all kinds of things to do. And she didn't have vacuum cleaners. She didn't have Molly made. Let's put it that way. She was doing it all herself. And it was tough. So those kids didn't get a tremendous amount of attention. And they just loved being loved by me. And I loved loving them because I don't have any children. So that was an incredible experience. What it also did is it opened my eyes to a very different reality. Years later, when I learned about Girls Matter and the opportunity to help educate girls in Africa, I didn't hesitate. I've served on the board now for years, and today my books also support that work. So why am I telling you this? Because every decision leaves something behind. Some change your business, some change your priorities, some change the legacy that you want to leave. That decision didn't just change one trip, it changed me. When I returned to Canada, I was sleeping on the floor in a friend's basement. I had another decision to make. I could build the business everyone expected me to build, or I could build the one I believed in. I chose the second. I started a pole dancing business. Now, Before anybody jumps to conclusions, I'm also an ordained minister. Okay. And those two things I know don't usually appear in the same sentence, needless to say. My business coach fired me. Some people thought I had completely lost my mind. However, the business became a huge success. And really, for me, it was all about empowering women, seeing women play and swing around this pole and have the confidence to do it and to feel their femininity. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. The media loved it. I was dubbed the pole dancing minister. However, what was I loved the most was the impact it had on the women. I still can see a woman that they got out of a wheelchair and brought her to the pole so she could just sway to the music and just feel her body. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Why am I telling you this? Because every entrepreneur will receive advice, and some of it will be excellent, and some of it won't. The real question isn't whether people approve of your decisions. The question is whether you've made the right decision for you. Because if you build your business around other people's approval, you'll spend your life asking for permission instead of making decisions. One of the most valuable decision filters I've ever used in business has saved me a tremendous amount of time, money, and frustration. It's the difference between being efficient and being effective. So, efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. Those are not the same. So, think about yesterday. Were you mostly efficient or were you effective? So, every day, entrepreneurs will say, so how can I do this faster? Very few people stop to ask, should I be doing this at all? That question really is what changes everything. Because you can answer every email and perfect every graphic and research every possible option and still avoid the one decision that would move your business forward. Being busy is the most socially acceptable form of procrastination. It feels responsible, it looks productive. You may even be exhausted at the end of the day. Yet exhaustion is not proof that you accomplished something important. It only proves that you are busy. Have you ever had one of those days when you work 12 hours, you cross 20 things off your list, and you're so proud of yourself, and yet you still didn't do one thing that really mattered? Entrepreneurs are especially vulnerable to this because there's always something to do. Have you noticed? Another platform to learn, another funnel to build, another expert telling you that you need a podcast, a YouTube channel, a course, and apparently 17 reels before lunch. You can work 18 hours a day and you can still spend those 18 hours moving in the wrong direction, doing the wrong things. That isn't an efficiency problem, it's a decision problem. The question simply can't be, what can I get done today? The better question is, what is the right thing to do? That is the decision. And it's usually the harder one because doing the right thing may require you to stop something you've already invested time, money, and energy into. It may mean admitting that an offer isn't working, partnership is wrong, a client is costing you money, or the business model you've built no longer fits the life you want. Consistency matters. Persistence matters. Following through matters. There's also a point where persistence becomes stubbornness. When the facts change, your decision may need to change. And changing your mind isn't weakness. Pretending you don't know what you know is. So an efficient entrepreneur asks, how can I do this faster? An effective entrepreneur, should I be doing this at all? An efficient entrepreneur improves the system. An effective entrepreneur questions whether the system should exist in the first place. Sometimes the right thing isn't another task. It's a conversation you've been avoiding, a price you need to raise, a client you need to let go of, a project you need to cancel, a boundary you need to establish, or a decision you already know you need to make. You may not need another strategy. You may not need another tool. You may not need more information. You may simply need to stop hiding inside efficiency and decide what would be most effective. Walking away from my investment in Molly Maid was not efficient. Starting over wasn't efficient. Learning an entirely new business in the automotive industry wasn't efficient. Creating a business that never existed before, my pole dancing business, certainly wasn't efficient, but they were effective because they moved me toward the life and the work that I wanted, the life I don't regret. Efficiency helps you travel faster. Effectiveness determines whether you're traveling in the right direction. There is no prize for reaching the wrong decision, the wrong destination ahead of schedule. When we began this morning, I asked you to think about the biggest frustration in your business. So I wonder if you're looking at it differently now. Maybe the problem isn't the problem. Maybe there's a decision underneath it. So let me ask you again. What's the decision underneath your biggest business problem? Is it a conversation you've been avoiding? A price you've been afraid to raise? A client you've outgrown? A project it's time to finish? Or one it's time to walk away from? Over more than 40 years in business, here's what I know. It isn't the entrepreneur with the biggest business or the biggest budget who wins. It's the entrepreneur who's willing to make the next decision again and again and again. Looking back over my life, I don't remember every marketing campaign, every website, or every logo. I remember the decisions to start, the decisions to leave, the decisions to begin again, the decision to trust myself, the decision to keep going. And that's also the reason why I wrote the book, Life's Too Short for Maybe. Stop overthinking, start deciding. I didn't write it because I think people need more motivation. I wrote it because I think there's a better way to make decisions. Because once you become a better decision maker, everything changes. Your business changes, your confidence changes, your relationship changes, your life changes. So I'd like to leave you with one question. What's the one decision you've been putting off that once you make it, changes everything else? Whatever it is, make it, because life is too short for maybe. Thank you.